Welcome to Leading by Example, Sparking Innovation through Human-Centered Leadership, a think tank media podcast. Hosted by Andrew Whitson, leadership strategist, educator, and founder of Person First Consulting, this show explores how trust, empathy, and inclusive leadership shape stronger teams, smarter innovation, and healthier workplace cultures. Because when you lead people first, results will follow. Let's get started.
Hello, and welcome back to Leading by Example, Sparking Innovation through Human-Centered Leadership. I'm your host, Andrew Whitson, the CEO and founder of Person First Consulting, and I'm happy to jump into a new conversation here today. But before we do that, I do want to just quickly recap what we talked about in last week's episode. So we covered quite a few different things in regards to human-centered leadership and sparking innovation. The first side of things here, we talked about several different skills that you can build to foster innovation through human-centered leadership. So things like curiosity, self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and empathy, as well as the behaviors that help to foster those things as well. So seeking input from your team, creating a psychologically safe environment, as well as communicating with transparency. And then on the other side of things, we talked about some challenges to human-centered leadership. I know I often talk about the fact that a lot of this sounds really great and like, why doesn't every organization do these things? But the reality is there are some challenges to this approach. And so we talked about, that resistance to change, as well as the idea of balancing innovation with results and how, it can't always be coming up with new ideas. We have to also allow things to create results as well. And then the potential for a lack of support from, the organizational leadership. And then some ways that we talked about approaching that, utilizing things like case studies, pilot programs, as well as building things into your training and celebrating small wins. So lots of great stuff in last week's episode, and I'm looking forward to an even more great conversations here. And today we are joined with our guest speaker, who is Laura Holt from Eight-Legged Moves. And so it looks like Laura has joined in. Welcome, Laura. How are you?
Doing well, Andrew. Thanks so much.
No problem. So I'm just going to give a brief overview of Laura's bio here. So Laura uses she, her pronouns, is a speaker, workshop facilitator, and inclusive leadership expert, is a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and holds a master's degree in global education. And her unique lived experience shapes how she helps organizations build inclusive cultures. She is best known for her work in universal design and neurodivergence inclusion, drawing on over 10 years of experience in program management, HR, and community building. Laura focuses on empowering individuals and fostering inclusive professional spaces. By treating team culture like an intentional project, she helps leaders reflect on how to create welcoming onboarding experiences and strong, flexible team dynamics where all kinds of minds can succeed. Laura, so good to see you and welcome. I am looking forward to jumping into our questions here. But before we do that, I want to give you a chance to say hi to folks and introduce yourself in addition to your bio.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Andrew. We've known each other for a long time and great to be here. I do have my LinkedIn here that people can connect with me on. I love networking, and LinkedIn is kind of a personal passion of mine and a way to reach out to me. But I think, what you said in my bio, is accurate. Happy Pride Month to anyone celebrating in the coming month. And of course, all year for us queer folk that are going to just be thinking about it probably 24/7. I don't have too much else to add, kind of have a variety of types of organizations I've worked in and helped out with and certain different types of clients. And so I'll just be really sharing from a lot of my lived experiences today, as well as some client examples, if they're helpful.
Perfect. And I'll share a couple personal anecdotes to add on to your wonderful bio. But, speaking of LinkedIn, Laura has actually helped me with my own LinkedIn. So, a lot of people have asked, where did I get my ideas? And some of them came from our guest here today, Laura. And then
thank you.
you're welcome. To connect it back to that, pride as well. Laura and I were on the executive board of a employee resource group at one of our previous employers. And so, built and led that organization. And so wanted to bring Laura into this conversation, especially while we are during Pride Month, to share a little bit about our experience with that and other things that we've been working on. So let's dive on in.
Awesome.
So first question here, human-centered leadership gets talked about a lot, but I'd love to hear, what it means to you when you think about it and how you would describe it to folks that you're working on or with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I know it sounds like last week, and I'm sure multiple people have mentioned this, but curiosity definitely plays into this quite a bit. So I will also put a hand kind of high five to that. I think you need to use curiosity in order to understand, your team and your direct reports, if that's who you're working with. But I think kind of from a more holistic, I think, very broad perspective, I think about human-centered leadership and then the opposite, which to me would be work-centered leadership.
Mm.
And to me, it's about taking your team first and making sure you understand them, you're curious about them, you get to know them, curious about what makes each teammate tick before kind of digging down into the actual work. Because I think without that and without considering the actual people on your team, the work won't come along as well as it can. I don't think you can have a truly productive team if they don't have a certain, as last week was mentioning, psychological safety and support that they might need. And I think human-centered leadership is about considering them first before the work product, because the work product won't come along without it. If your team's burnt out or struggling with really rigid processes that they feel like they can't give you feedback about, external stakeholders or customers will also feel that too. So it's really just a cycle of treating the human problems first, or not problems, problems before they become a problem, so that everyone can be productive and do the work they're supposed to do.
That's great. And one thing that you said there really resonated for me, in that I think a lot of times some of the challenge to human-centered leadership is, oh, that's so touchy-feely and I don't have time to think about, my coworkers outside of work. And it doesn't always have to be that way, right? Like what you said, like what makes them tick at work too, right? Like, so like if you as a leader feel uncomfortable asking people or getting to know them outside of work, that can be okay as well. It doesn't have to be like, outside of your comfort.
Some forced bonding. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think kind of what you said there of what makes them really excited about their work, or what do they thrive in at work? If that's kind of your comfort zone, I think that's okay. Right. So
Yeah.
I like how
And, we do say that work often is our life. And so by getting to know how they are at work, that is also sometimes getting to know them outside of it too. One question at my current workplace we've been bringing up lately is something just as simple. I think this is a good bonding question because you can choose to make it about work or not. So people can choose to share what they want. But it's like, what could you talk all day about? And that could be someone's hobby, but it could be work related, and you're not specifying which one they have to say. But then also, what I think we were asking, what's currently stressing you out? Because again, that could and probably would be maybe a work related answer, but even that is, everyone is worried or stressed about different things. And if you, even as a manager, get to share also what you might be stressed out about, it helps build that transparency. And I think in some teams I've seen, people would give very different answers, and that helps to know where are their stress points and maybe what are they handling really well that has been chaos and change, and they're just running with it and it's not bothering them. You get that awareness as well.
Yeah, I love that. I think those are great questions, and like it opens the door for people to, if they feel comfortable and they want to share what's going on outside of work, that can be so valuable as a leader to get to know your team and what's going on outside, or just if it's at work, what's really, maybe you don't know what they've got going on as well as you should. So that gives them the door to open. I like it. So let's move on to, and this one is directly tied into, some work that you and I have done previously with first-time managers, and I think a lot of times first-time managers get, maybe thrust into a new role without a lot of training. So that can be a really overwhelming position to be in. So what are one or two things that you wish every new manager understood before they had their first direct report?
Yeah. Um, I would say one thing I thought was normal. It was very helpful for me, both when I've been a manager, but then also as a direct report, was again, taking the time to get to know your employee, but in a structured way and sharing the same about yourself. So what I would recommend and what I've seen work really well, but I haven't seen a lot of managers offering to do this with people is a quick, like, how to work with me document.
Mm.
It can be answering 5 questions that you as a manager want to answer and that you want your direct reports to answer, and teams can share that with each other. It's very, it'd be similar to like a communication assessment and sharing results. But I know a lot of teams right now might not have the money for having everyone take an assessment, and certainly not on their first day or you as a new manager. So just creating a couple of quick questions. What is your communication style? How do you best prefer to receive feedback? I think getting that foundation as you start to become a new manager and start to get to know your direct reports, that's the part where if you're asking that a month down the line, it might be too late. And, you might have been giving the feedback that really didn't resonate with them in the way you were delivering it. And you could have easily avoided that at the beginning. You could have known their strengths and what projects they really wanted to run with, that they get really excited about, and they're already off to do great work. So I think a document like that would be really helpful. And it can be a really quick, can you just complete this before our first one-on-one and we'll both share. Then they also get to know what your preferences are, because it is about that compromise in between. And then if people do have work assessments, I know some have like communication
Mm.
style, assessments, you can add those results and have a common language at work. And then I think also uh, considering what super kind of superpowers you have on your team as you get to know people and what your weaknesses are, and be ready to delegate your weaknesses. You don't even have to admit that you're not great at them, but you don't have to handle everything by yourself. So what are you self-aware enough to know you could delegate, and you have a teammate who's going to be really good at that? I've always been, like the note taker on the team from some of my like recruitment and coaching background. I'm constantly taking notes. My managers, where that wasn't their strength, it would have been a really great thing for them to be like, hey, can you take the notes? You're great at this. And I would easily have offered to do that, right? I don't
Yeah.
think you have to say, I'm horrible at taking notes. Can you please do it? Right. But, what do you want to give up so that you can focus on your own strengths as a manager? Don't be afraid to, spread out the work by whose strengths are what. And I think those would be two of probably my best suggestions. Kind of hit the ground running quickly is like, get to know your team and get to know who's good at doing what and what you kind of don't want to handle, and probably, maybe shouldn't. If you're not a detail oriented person, you've probably hired someone on your team who is.
Those are great. And I feel like the getting to know you document, I think, is a great piece of advice for managers as well as coworkers, even in relationships, right? Like even like some relationship or friendships, like that might be helpful.
Oh
So even
yes, I could totally picture that. Yeah, me and my wife did we did something like that when we first moved in together, and I think we called it like it was like a chore chart, except for we basically said, what chores do I love and which do I hate? And we saw if we could trade any of them. And it was the best idea ever, because it equitably allowed us to do what we were already strong at and what chores we were likely to get done anyways, and then not blame the other, if they're not doing the same exact chores as we are. So I took laundry, she took dishes.
I think that's at work or in relationship too, it could showcase, maybe some inequity, right? Like who's doing too much, who's not doing enough. So some weight to that anecdotal.
Yeah, you kind of put it all out on the table. Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. So I want to switch gears a little bit to some of the work that you've done around neurodivergence. I think it's a great thing that you are really strong at. So can you talk about maybe some best practices that you've seen for onboarding and getting to know new hires when you're unsure if they have a need for accommodations?
Yeah. So I think that my passion and lived experience with neurodivergence has led into me also geeking out and specializing in universal design, because I think that's part of the solution. You often would hear people talking about like waiting to receive a teammate's accommodations, right? And then you'd fix things, or then you'd offer things. And from what I've noticed in the disability community is, I forget the statistic, but let's call it half the community at work is not disclosing their disabilities because there isn't that psychological safety. Maybe they don't even know what the accommodation process looks like. Maybe it's not clear. And so universal design is this way to design well from the beginning so that people might, in theory, either not need accommodations, or while they're getting accommodations, that can take a while, they can still do their best work. And so that's creating either environments, tools, especially in my head, I think about documents, like, for example, training, in onboarding training, right? Are they accessible to everyone, not just to what we might call the normal person, which is usually what our lived experience is, right? Is it good for me? You're thinking more about, is it good for anyone who could come across this document, so that you don't need to make special adjustments, modifications later on, which is more costly, more expensive to go back and have to edit something completely for things that are going to come up on the team. I think that is a big thing. So even things, it depends. You're trying to accommodate or look out for many disabilities, but there are a couple quick checks you can make that are kind of accessible best practices. And I think about these, like some of them we were taught in school. It's just, don't have huge blocks of text, right? Break up text, use bullet points. There's other things like learning how screen readers could work for people who have low vision or no vision. You don't have to necessarily use a screen reader to check documents, but if you were to tab in a document over, right, would it work the way you think it would, or would you need to be clicking on something, right, to get to the right places? There's a couple quick checks you can make for things like that, and I think that would account for both, let's call it like visible disabilities, and for a lot of hidden disabilities, like very often people with some type of neurodivergence like ADHD or autism or dyslexia, you're not going to see that or notice it. So unless they mention it, which, that you wouldn't have to disclose what type of disability you have, you could assume that you might have someone with dyslexia on the team. Okay, what are some things I should look out for, right? You might have someone colorblind on the team. It becomes easier the more you look into it, but to do a quick double check. So I think about those things, as well as making processes flexible and maybe even training flexible, as in, could you present it in a couple different ways for different learning styles? If you are having someone read through a manual, is there also an option to perhaps still read the manual or something, but also have videos? That could be another option, or weekly check-ins to review it together. I know for me, if I had a 60-page manual, I would want some like deadline at the end of the week being like, please read one chapter and we'll go over one chapter, or 10 pages and we'll go over it, instead of please complete 60 pages by the end of 2 months. Good luck. My brain works a lot better with deadlines and with parsing chunks and not having this huge monumental task in front of me. And that would be a way to accommodate someone who maybe has a different learning style that really wouldn't put anyone else kind of out of their way or give you a whole lot of extra work. It's just making sure that the comprehension's there. So just kind of considering, what other ways could I best support someone who comes onto the team and not assume they learn or work exactly like me.
I love that. And I think I've seen this come to play as a teacher and as I'm working with applicants to, various programs. When you're thinking about, making this inclusive for all, and like you said, maybe being like, a lot of times I think we're in a reactive space in the accommodations world, but some of the things that we see would be really helpful to a lot of people. And doesn't necessarily have to, be a large investment of time or money to make those things better for everyone involved. So I love that share out. So I want to talk about this question that you actually brought to the table of, if I'm a new manager with neurodivergence or have a disability myself, how can I best accommodate my team while also keeping my own work preferences and accommodations in mind? I think this is a really great, combo of our neurodivergence topic that we're talking about, but also human-centered leadership. So I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah, I proposed this question because during a kind of workshop with new managers having to do with inclusive leadership, we were talking about accommodating direct reports. And they brought up, what if I'm the one with the disability, right? And maybe they also have disability. And what if those don't quite mesh with our learning styles being maybe completely opposite, or how we receive feedback? I think it would be kind of similar to opposing, communication styles at work, right? You'd handle it in probably a similar way, which is finding either a middle ground, if you can, or maybe a back and forth, like kind of like we do it my way this way and your way, the other way. It really depends what those differences are. But I think that one of the keys when it's possible is transparency. I don't Obviously, with accommodations, you never have to disclose what exactly is going on if you don't want to, but you could disclose, what I need to work best to be your manager and to be a good manager is this, right? Like, and would that work for you? And again, bringing that curiosity into it. Or I noticed that we have very differing opinions about how to give feedback. What do you think could be the compromise? Allowing that to be put on the table, and maybe calling out that you're seeing a difference and that you're not sure. Leaders do not have to be sure. I think asking the questions in the first place is part of that psychological safety. Is, I don't have all the answers. I'm noticing this. I know we need to discuss it. So can we both brainstorm some ideas? Employees are very capable of suggesting things when they know their feedback is wanted. And so opening that up for a discussion, I feel like must be the best way, because there is no clear, oh, you've got to go with your accommodations over theirs or vice versa, right? And sometimes compromises aren't, sometimes you're like, well, it has to happen this way, but okay, can we talk about it and figure out what the best maybe a way to acknowledge that there's not going to be a compromise is going to be, right? If I don't know, people ask for feedback by writing and you just know that you're always running around and you're just not going to be able to promise that. Okay, well, what else would they need? What else could happen? Or just acknowledging, I do hear you, but in reality, like, maybe we're frontline managers, right? Who just don't even have a computer bias where we can email people instructions. What else could work? Could you keep a notepad by your side or something and note take, or what else would work for you? So there is no easy answer, which is why that person asked it. But I think open-ended questions to help figure those out, that means you're at least open to listening to their ideas.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And, I can recall a couple of times actually where supervisors or leaders in organizations that I've been a part of have openly shared, what they have going on and what accommodations they have in place or would like. And that just sort of sets the table for it being okay, even if it's not the same thing that you might have going on or a similar level of thing that you have going on. It makes you feel more okay to talk about it and disclose it, or ask for things that you might need that you may not have felt comfortable doing before, right? It just
Exactly
gives you that safe space, I think. And like you said, builds that psychological safety. You're showing empathy by asking questions and working as a team. So it hits on a lot of things that we've already talked about here at, on the podcast. So I think that's a perfect example. So we're going to end with a fun question. We talked a little bit about June being Pride Month. Anything going on personally, professionally for Pride Month that you want to share or call attention to?
So I'm here in the Denver, Colorado area. So I am very grateful and lucky to be in a very supportive state at this time. And so I decided to actually do some tabling this month. This will be my first time engaging in Pride Month in such kind of a large public way, I guess. But I'll be at Longmont Pride. It's one of my favorite ones. It's a smaller town in the outskirts, kind of suburbs of Denver-ish. And going to be just kind of sharing about my current workplace, which is very queer friendly. And so I felt like I wanted to share with people, if you're looking for a job, like, consider it here. Know that this is a welcoming environment, and they're also very disability friendly. They have, I actually personally got in with both my skill set, and they had a disability kind of advocacy program going on, where if you disclosed you had a disability, you had some kind of, I won't call it preferential treatment, right? But some points assigned to your process. And I thought that was really an innovative way, because they were working on, increasing their disability representation at work. So kind of encouraging people to consider employers they might not have otherwise. And I'm excited to do that, and just be spending, time with my wife. But for us, it's kind of queer life every day. So that I wanted to make sure I was doing my part as kind of an advocate for the community and an ally to the trans community. But I think us personally, we'll just kind of be living our lives as normal.
Sounds good. Yeah, I can relate with that. I'm going to be traveling quite a bit in June, so I'll have to have pride from all over.
Yeah, exactly.
But,
What other cities are doing, maybe.
I guess I haven't looked to see if it combines with pride when I'm traveling. Probably not, but a lot of great conversations happening this month surrounding pride and lots of other great things. So looking forward to continuing the convo about, all things, including, human-centered leadership, as well as unconscious bias, and lots of other great things that all need to happen year round, not just in June.
Amazing. Yeah, looking forward to those episodes.
So, Well, Laura, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to catch up with you and see you. And I know I see your posts on LinkedIn. And so as you can see here on the screen, feel free to connect with Laura. She's an amazing, both career coach as well as leadership coach, and just all around amazing person. And so definitely give her a connect. And then also to prepare for next week. So next week we are going to talk about, we're going to be talking, diving into a little bit more detail about human-centered leadership and fostering innovation through things like case studies, some real-world application, and actionable steps for you all, my listeners. So looking forward to that. And as always, if you enjoyed what you saw here today and you want to get in touch, you can check out my website, as well as reach out via email or at LinkedIn. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks. Bye, Andrew.
Thank you for spending time with us on Leading by Example, sparking innovation through human-centered leadership. You can watch every episode of the podcast inside Hospitality Nexus, a global human-first platform bringing the hospitality ecosystem together in one place. Inside the Nexus, it's a career fair that never closes, connecting industry leaders, educators, students, employers, and partners through real presence. Explore more at hospitalitynexus.org. Until next time, lead people first, results follow.